So as we finish this section, 3.4, I want us to look at one more example. And I want us to look at an example that comes from the homework so that you can see the formatting and see exactly what the homework is asking you to do. So our problem says, and here are our two premise statements and our conclusion. So our problem says, if you believe, anything's possible. So that is premise 1. The second sentence is premise 2, you don't believe. And this ... in math stands for the word therefore. So this last statement reads, therefore, some things are not possible. And that's our conclusion. So this is set up in the same way that the other two examples were. All right, the first sentence is premise 1, the second sentence is premise 2, and the final sentence is the conclusion, just like we're used to. Now, in some ways, this is a little bit easier because they have gone ahead and they have noted that the P should be that you believe. So they've already told you that. And the Q should be anything is possible. So they're telling you that as well. So that makes things a little bit easier for us. So the first thing they're asking us to do is to write the argument in symbolic form, which means that we're going to come back up here to this argument and we're going to write things in terms of P's and Q's. So our first statement is the if-then statement. So it starts out, if you believe. So remember that you believing is P. So I'm going to start by writing a P down. I know it's an if-then statement, so I'm going to write my arrow. And then the then part is anything's possible. And we know that anything is possible is the Q. So premise 1 can be written as P arrow Q. Okay, let's look at premise 2. You don't believe. Well, we know that P is that you do believe. This is you don't believe. So this is going to be the negation of P. Okay, and then our conclusion, the part below the line, says some things are not possible. Well, we know that Q is that anything is possible. And now we're saying some things are not possible. So this is going to be the negation of our Q. Okay, so part A of the problem just asks us to match up what we've come up with one of the answer choices. So my first line is P arrow Q, so I'm looking for that. That is the case in A, also in C, not in B, and not in D. The first line does not match up in these two. So I'm going to go ahead and eliminate these. I know that it's not those. And I'm going to come back and look more closely at A and C. So we need a negation of P on the second line, which we have here. And we need a negation of Q underneath the line. So it looks like choice A is the correct choice. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is it's asking us, is the argument valid or invalid? So this is where we're going to make our truth table and determine whether or not all the possibilities are true or whether they're not, in which case it would be invalid. So let's go ahead and put these three statements together and then we'll set up our truth table. All right, so remember how we do it. We put the premise 1 and the premise 2 separated with an and symbol. All right, so I'm going to write this down here so we have it. I'm going to write premise 1, which is P arrow Q. And I'm going to go ahead and put that in a set of parentheses. Then I'm going to put my and symbol. And I'm going to put premise 2. So remember that's the way that it always goes. The two premises, the two things above the line in this case, will be separated with an and. And then remember that we have our double arrow. And we write our conclusion down. So our conclusion is the negation of Q. Okay, so this is the statement that I'm going to look at when I set up my truth values in my truth table. Okay, so I have this pretty much already set up here for us. We've got the standard P and Q columns. We've got the P arrow Q. We've got the negation of P. We've got all of that put together on the left-hand side. We have the negation of Q for the right-hand side. And we have the entire statement. All right, so let's go ahead and work this out and see what we get. All right, so for P arrow Q, I'm going to begin by copying my P's down. So true, true, false, false. I'm going to put my arrow in. And then I'm going to copy my Q's. Okay, so now we'll go to our handout and we'll look on the if-then chart and we'll come up with our answers. So we have true for the first one, false for the second one, and true for the last two. Okay, negation of P. Let's fill out that column. So we're doing the opposite of these. So we'll have false, false, true, true. And now we're going to put those two columns together. So I'm first going to write the answers to P arrow Q. So I'm going to come back over here and the answers that I got here, I'm going to copy over here. So true, false, true, true. I am going to do my and symbol. And then I'm going to copy the negation of P column. So that is F, F, true, true. All right, now we'll go to our and table and we will write the answers down for these four. So the first one is false. The second one is false. The third one and the fourth one are both true. All right, let's do the negation of Q. So that is the opposite of these. So we'll have false, true, false, true. And now let's put them together. So we're going to rewrite the left-hand side answers, which would be the answers to these four. False, false, true, true. We'll put our arrow. And then we're going to put our answers for the negation of Q. So false, true, false, true. And then we'll go through and look up answers to these. So these are our if-thens. So we know the first one is true, the second one is true, the third one is false, and the fourth one is true. So this argument is an invalid argument because remember that we're supposed to have all trues to make it valid. Okay, so we know that it's invalid. All right, so let's look at our answer choices up here. So it says the argument is invalid because the conclusion is not a tautology, or the argument is invalid because the conclusion is a tautology. Remember, tautology means all trues, so we don't have that. So I'm going to go here with option C. And like I said, this is the format that you're going to see when you go to My Math Lab to start working your homework.